to A Well-Designed Business. My name is LuAnn Nigara, and I'm so glad you found this podcast. Together with my husband Vince and our partner Bill, we have grown our company Window Works from the ground up. So I know and I understand the challenges you face in running your interior design business. I also know that your talent alone isn't enough to ensure your success. So on this podcast, we talk about strategies and practical steps to help you grow your business. But make no mistake about it, we have our share of fun here too, mixed in with those aha moments that I love so much. This isn't fluff. Nobody has time for that. Whether you are a new interior designer or a seasoned designer, I am here to help you create and to manage the kind of interior design firm that you dream of. It's straight talk and it's action. Are you ready? Let's get started. Hi, welcome to A Well-Designed Business. It's Power Talk Friday. Jude Charles is with me today. Jude is a story-driven filmmaker, brand strategist, and speaker. For over 13 years, he has been producing documentaries and video for purpose-driven entrepreneurs. He lives and breathes your brand. He digs deep to find the compelling stories that no one else knows about you, and then he helps you leverage those stories to scale your business and attract your ideal client. I'm very excited to share this conversation with you today, because we have had many experts in the last 4 years tell us how important it is to put video on our website, right? And to create video email sequence programs and so forth. But the truth is you can't just create video for video's sake. It has to be compelling. And Jude is here to teach us that it's the story that creates that aspect of compelling video. So very, very happy to have him with us today. And it got me thinking, our sponsor, Kravet Inc. Have you heard the story of Kravet Inc? It's also a very interesting story. Okay, so more than 100 years ago, it starts in 1903. Samuel Kravet arrived in New York City from Russia. He had a passion for men's fashion, and he started selling buttons, elastics, and zippers, okay? Then this would require him to visit the luxurious homes of his clients. And that sparked a new idea in him. He started designing trimmings, tassels, and tiebacks, woven together through the years, thread by thread, with people, places, and passion. Kravet has grown in size, all the while remaining true to its founding principles: extraordinary quality, unwavering integrity, and uncompromising commitment to the industry. 5 generations and 100 years later, these same principles continue to act as Kravet's guiding light. And I'm so grateful and happy to have them as a sponsor of the show. So thanks tons, Kravet. All righty, guys, let's meet Jude Charles. Hi, Jude. Thanks so much for joining me on A Well-Designed Business today.
Thank you for having me, LuAnn. It's definitely a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, so your business is so exciting. I'm like ready to dive into it. What you do is so I love what you do, because we have had many designers on the show that have effective video on their websites. Off the top of my head, I'm thinking of Pulp Design Studio. I'm thinking of Marie Flanagan Interiors. And Marie Flanagan Interiors, Jude, I interviewed her going back 4 years ago. And that was when it really was pretty unusual to have video on an interior designer's website. And of course, now it's much more commonplace, but she was doing it at a very high level of production, just like what you do. But here's the thing that's always been the missing ingredient for me in looking and trying to understand how, as business owners, we get terrific video for our show. It's that little part that is your superpower, the storytelling part. Tell us a little bit about how and why the storytelling is so important if you're going to take the time, energy, and money to create a video.
Yeah, that's a great question, LuAnn. Storytelling is extremely important. It is the secret sauce. It is the reason why we'll sit through a 2-hour-long movie. It's the reason why we'll go to a play and again, sit through maybe what could be a 2-hour-long play. The reason why it's so important is because at a very core level, it's the way that we communicate. It's the way that we understand each other as human beings. Story is about a very specific moment in time. many people have different. The reason I wanted to give that definition is because many people have different definitions for what story is and why it's effective. But the most important thing to understand is that story is about a very specific moment in time. So, for example, I could tell the story of how I actually got started in this business as a 17-year-old sitting in a TV production classroom, being taught video production every single day for a whole year, and then having a teacher who realized I had a talent in video production and saying to me, Jude, you should start a business. You're really talented at this. And then not waiting for me to say yes or no, the following day buying my first set of business cards for me.
Wow.
That story in itself, I just told you about, basically it's a 2-day story, but I told you about the day that the teacher told me I should start a business, and then the following day when she decided to buy my first set of business cards for me, right? It's about a very specific moment in time, and your response immediately is, wow, right?
Yes.
Because when we tell a story like that, and again, I didn't go into the full, long, drawn-out story. I told it in about 30 seconds, but when you tell a story like that, it immediately gives you a different frame of reference as to who I am and the kind of conversation that we could have moving forward. And that is why storytelling is so important. It's not just about, I know one thing that you talk about a lot, it's not just about the talent. It's also about, there's other things that you need to do in your business to help you understand how to grow your business to the next level.
Right. It's the truth. It's so true.
Yep.
And that's exciting. I mean, and what it was is the reason that I said, wow, was because that's impactful that somebody had such belief in you that like overnight she comes back with business cards. And also add to it, you're 17. So when you say that this gives me as a listener an immediate frame of reference on you, you're so right, because here I am, I'm talking to you about your skill, your talent, your business as a storyteller and a videographer. Or I don't know if that's really, you're not a videographer, but
No.
You're video production, like, right? But what happens with that is I automatically just threw a whole heap of credibility on you from that one. Like at 17, somebody saw a talent for you to be able to create a storyline out of nothing. And now I automatically have so much more respect is plain English, right?
Right. And that's why it's important to be able to share our stories. It's not, especially as an interior designer, it's awesome to have a portfolio and to be able to show that you can do great work. But what I always ask my clients is, who are you, though? Like, outside of just, you have a great eye, or that you're able to, help clients get across the finish line, like, who are you at your core? Are you a mother? Are you a husband? Like, what is it that matters to you? Do you like to go and watch hockey games? Do you like to go and watch baseball? Like, what is it that matters to you that tells me more about who you are than just about the thing that you can do?
Right. And the thing about this is, Jude, on our show, we have had this, we call it our Fred Burns only. It's become a thing. Okay. Fred Burns is one of my most beloved repeated guests, and he talks about what is your only. And he says the same thing, like, who are you? What is it? And it doesn't necessarily have to relate to your design aesthetic. It can relate to anything, but figure out what it is, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, yeah. It's that connection point, because people are, it's as a human being, we are fascinated by the little things that seem inconsequential. I remember being at a conference once, and I can't remember his name now, but the guy that used to run AOL before it was sold, he was at the conference and he was doing a tour, and he was doing a bus tour. And I remember they did a Q&A section, and the very first person that goes up to ask the question, he asks us a question like, who gets the top bunk on the bus tour? Right? Because it's those little things that takes this person that, of course we're seeing him on stage, we're seeing him talk on a mic, but it's those little things that makes us feel just a little bit more connected to this person that we don't see every single day. And so yeah, when we talk about who are you, it's because it's once you get to know those little things, knowing that I started at 17, that a teacher inspired me, that she bought my first set of business cards. Like you said, it changed the way we have that conversation. But it's very small. It's very inconsequential. It's how I got started, but it's very small to the overarching story of where I am now. But it's those, it makes us just a little bit more human. And more than anything, that's what we're looking for, is that connection that makes us just a little bit more human.
Right. Because as an entrepreneur, since that moment, there's been 1,000 things that you've done that might have been, wildly bigger events and things like that, and lows and highs and everything else. But that one moment in time, like you said, really does frame what we will think and, how we'll process everything you'll say from now on. I love it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
And this is your superpower. Your superpower is helping people figure this out. So at its core, you're like a storyteller whisperer.
Yeah, absolutely. I am a storyteller whisperer. What I also say is that I'm a detective because I'm digging for the truth, right? You may tell me, LuAnn, as someone who's run a business for a very long time in window treatment and in interior design, you may tell me that, you got started. Well, actually, let's have a little fun with this. How did you get started in window treatment?
Well, my husband now was my boyfriend then, and he had opened the first quote-unquote franchise of Window Works in New Jersey. It was a chain in Florida in the late 70s. His best friend started it. And after X amount of years, he said, you should have one in New Jersey. And my husband is a serial entrepreneur. At that point, he had a full-time job at the Newark probation officer. He was a Newark probation officer. And then he had 2 health clubs. And he did taxes on the side for people. He's coached and refereed. Total serial entrepreneur. But I worked for him at the health club, and I quit there, went to another job, was not a sales job. And it was the first time I was not doing sales. And after 5 or 6 months of complaining, like, why did I ever leave a sales job? Like, I can't even breathe if I'm not selling. This is ridiculous. And he says to me, well, I got this thing running out of my basement. We started it 6 or 7 months ago. It's kind of just like, not sure where it's going to go. Think I'm going to make something out of it. Like, you could sell window treatments for me until you figure out your next step. And that was that was 40 years ago. I'm good at selling. And so I came in, and with my, skill set of selling, we really started to bust up the business, quite frankly.
Mm-hmm. And as you're telling me that story, right, there's more questions I'd go into asking in between. But what I'm searching for is the truth. And what I mean by that is, I always like to start with why. I get that from Simon Sinek. It's no secret. And he talks about starting with why. Because many people can talk about what they do, and they can talk about how they do what they do differently. But very few people can talk about why they do what they do. And that why starts to create the thread for your story. And that why is what I'm searching for. And so that's why I call myself a detective, because if you watch detective shows like Law and Order SVU or different shows like that, you see this, they go on this journey of figuring out what is the truth. They may think the truth is one thing. In the very beginning of the episode, we see how, the killer kills this person, right? They murder this person. But then you go throughout the entire episode and all the little clues in between, and you figure out, almost towards the end, you figure out who actually did it and how they did it, right? And for me, that is what I'm in search of. Is I'll go on search of, like, okay, you're telling me, like, you were great at sales and you started this, but after 40 years, I beg the question that you absolutely love window treatments. You are an expert at it and you love doing it, but why? Why did you stay in this one business? Of course, you're doing podcasting now, but why did you stay in this one business for 40 years and still a part of it? Why did you decide to do that? And it's questions like that help create this thread and help me to become, like, as you call it, a storyteller whisperer, but it helps me create that thread so that you understand how to tell your story in a very emotional, impactful way.
That's pretty interesting, Jude, because I'll tell you what, I have said it over and over again. If when I met him and he said that same sentence to me, and I've got this copy machine business that I've started, we would have had an outstanding copy machine business. I've said it over and over again. I was not attracted to the window treatments. I was attracted to the sale. But what's interesting, and I want to share with you, is I have explored why did we stay with it all these years with my speaking coach, which is Carol Cox of Speaking Your Brand. And it has been incorporated into the speaking presentations that I do, the actual why. Why did it stay? Why did we stay with it for 40 years? And why at this point, with other opportunities that are happening through the podcast and speaking and writing, why do we continue to do window works as opposed to selling it, closing it, giving it away? And there is a true answer to that question, so it's very interesting that the process, whether it is Fred Burns working with you or Nicole Heimer doing a branding process, discovery process with you, or someone like yourself or my speaking coach, it's true. You've got to get to what is the heart of somebody's essence so that you can help them, whether it's a speaking coach or yourself or Ms. Nicole Heimer in creating your brand, so you can help them share that and attract the people to them, correct?
Correct. Absolutely correct. And I think the most important part that you mentioned is towards the end is attracting the right people to them, right? Mm-hmm. Because ultimately we're in business to love what we do, to have fun doing what we do. And part of that is being able to help others. But you want to help the right person, right? Mm-hmm. You don't want to work with someone that isn't the right fit. And so you go on that journey of figuring out the why. And I love it. I love that others are doing this because it's important. It's who we are at our core, getting to the heart of the matter. You go on that journey so that ultimately when you do all that hard and deep work, you get to work with the right type of person and love what you do every single day.
Interesting. I love it. I love it. So there's one thing that you said, and then I'm going to ask you about your road mapping process. But there was one thing that you said up in the beginning. You said, we talked to us about how we go to a movie and it's a 2-hour, it's a 2-hour storytelling. We sit there and we watch it because of the storyline and the thread going through it. It captivates us. I have to say, I think what you do is 15, 20 million times harder, because if somebody has 2 hours to tell a story, you have 2 hours, but you create stories in 3-minute and 5-minute and 2-minute videos, Jude. I think that isn't that so much more challenging?
Actually, it's a lot easier. It's a
really?
lot easier. I have done the longer form videos because I do documentaries and documentary series. So I have done longer form, but the shorter 5-minute videos, let's say, is easier because most of the time we're focused on one core story.
Oh,
right?
Okay.
And whereas with a 2-hour film, you have to keep this story engaging for 2 hours.
Oh,
which, you have a lot of ups and downs, you have twists and turns. But to tell one story in 3 minutes, to tell one story in 5 minutes, it makes it a lot easier because then I'm focused and I know I only have 3 minutes to tell this story, right? So you have to cut out the fat, essentially, right? You have to cut out the things that aren't important to the story that you don't have as much time. And so for me, it's easier to tell a 3-minute story because when you go into telling even a 30-minute story or a 60-minute story, as you speak on stage, that to be able to piece this together to keep the audience engaged for that long, that is the true challenge, I think. Yeah.
See, I think that's where you have such that innate skill that your teacher first recognized, because when you said, hey, I've got 3 minutes, I've got to cut out the fat, that's easier for me. I have to say, I think that's you knowing your craft so well, because I think that's where the rest of us would, without the skill set, get caught up. It's like, what did you spend, 45 seconds over there for? You didn't need that. And it reminds me of the talent that an interior designer has. There's a saying that designers use that, there's magic in the edit, right? And so you're the same way. You're editing out in a 3-minute production, you're editing out the things that do not serve the story that you're telling. And an interior designer's skill set is to look at a room and edit out the things that aren't right. Whereas the rest of us would be like, hey, let's put another tree there. Let's put another vase there. But it's that designer eye, just like your storytelling eye, that pulls out and discards, no matter how beautiful this vase is, it doesn't belong. It's not necessary. And for you, you're doing that in that same process. This is not core to this story. Let's get on track, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It is exactly the same process because for me, I've always said a great storyteller is a great editor. And the reason for that is like I mentioned with cutting out the fat. But when I'm in search for the truth, I am taking everything that you're telling me and I may be writing it down, but I'm looking at, well, is this really the truth here? Is there something else different here that we should be talking about? And so, yeah, the same way that a designer may look at, no, we don't need that tree in that corner there. It's not important. It doesn't create the experience that the client is wanting, right? Like the interior designer that I worked with in 2013, I remember him telling a story about how his client was amazed at the fact that, he wanted that this designer, his name is William, he was asking, where do you like to sit in the morning? Right? Like, what is it that you do in the morning? What is your morning routine? And where do you like to sit? And the client was so taken aback by it, but he was like, wouldn't you want, a lamp there if you sit there in the morning and it's dark before you wake up? Wouldn't you want to have a magazine rack or something that holds your magazines if that's what you're doing in the morning? Like, you're editing based off of what is important to the other person, right? Because you mentioned that's the purpose. You want to know, does it serve the story? Does it serve its purpose? What is our end goal? Right? Like, that is the most important part, is editing away so that we can get to the end goal. We get to the straight line. That's the most important part.
I love it. I love it. So awesome. So when people work with you, you have what you call the road mapping process. This is the way to enter your process. Tell us a little bit about this, what happens in it, and what someone could expect.
Yeah, so when I first started video production, I would have these clients that I'd create videos for, and then they would upload the video online, and they would just basically say, check it out, and then nothing else happens after that, right? And so they expect that if we do a great video, then it's going to go viral on its own, and that's not usually how it works. What I incorporated, what I began, was this road mapping strategy session. And what it really is we spend a full day, a full 8 hours, planning out from beginning to end. Before I ever press record on the camera, before we even get to a point of telling your story, we think about, how are we going to tell this story? We think about, what is your story? And then we think about, how are you going to use it towards the end? Are you going to use it through email marketing? Are you going to use it through Facebook and Facebook ads? Are you going to use it when you're speaking on stage? Because maybe you're an interior designer who gains your clients from going to different conferences and speaking on stage. Well, there's an opportunity there to use your videos. And so we think through this whole entire plan and process, where I start with why. It's the very first thing is why, getting to the core of your origin story. And then there's another part of it that I call the dramatic demonstration of proof. Because it's not just going into making claims that you're the best, but proving it and showing visual proof. Because we as human beings believe what we see with our eyes. Hearing something said 1,000 times is not as convincing as seeing it once for yourself. And so then once we create that dramatic demonstration of proof, or we understand how that's going to happen, we create the whole entire storyboard, then we go into, okay, how do you market this to make sure that this gets out to the right client at the right time on the right platform? And that's the entire road mapping process, is thinking about everything from beginning to end. And then once we've thought through everything, then pressing record, then actually creating that dynamic story.
Wow. It's something else. When someone does this process with you, Jude, you're located in Fort Lauderdale. Do you do it over Zoom this 8-hour day? Do they have to come to you? Do you go to them? How do you do that logistically?
I go to them. So the road mapping is an investment, but I take that investment and I put it back into the project, and I go to them and I decide that, you know what, I want to know what it's like to be in your space. So whether it's their office or wherever they may work out of, I want to be in their space. I want them to be extremely comfortable so that we can get to the truth, right? Because it can be a bit unnerving if I'm asking 1,001 questions, and questions that you may not have been asked before. Like, I can imagine as you went through your own why process, like, you had to get really deep and go back 30, 40 years and really think about, why did I stay in this business, right? Mm-hmm. And so it can be a bit unnerving. I've had clients tell me, like, it's almost like a therapy session.
Right. Well, and it's so funny because Nicole Heimer at Curio Electro, she has a brand discovery process, and she's done the websites for both WindowWorks and LuAnn Niagara. She's been on the show several times. And I remember the first time when she was creating the LuAnn Niagara website, it was, it was a baby being born. It wasn't wasn't like Window Works. Well, let me tell you who we are because we're very clear on that. But for that, it was like, okay, let's go through this discovery process. And I remember telling everybody, I'm like, it's like therapy for your business. It's amazing.
Yes. So it's the same thing. And I want to make sure that the client feels extremely comfortable. So I go to them, and we spend the entire 8 hours together, uninterrupted. Of course, we'll take a break for lunch or things like that, but we take the entire day focused on the business and focused on your story so that we create the most impactful story or multiple stories for the end result.
And I recall even similarly, like I said, when I went through the process with Carol Cox for creating my keynote speech and the secondary presentations and so forth, what's interesting is in the process when you are there asking question after question after question, what happens is you watch the ones that you objectively relate to or that spark you. And you're, in that process, right? You're like, oh, right here, let's go into this further. Now I feel like I'm getting to you, right? I imagine that's similar when you're working with somebody.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It happens all the time because I think, as entrepreneurs, we tend to take for granted what I call small stories that are really big stories. We take it for granted because we downplay it. But to another person, it can be extremely compelling and fascinating. For a long time, I never told that story of the teacher at 17 years old buying my first set of business cards and really how that gave me the courage to say, of course I can be an entrepreneur. Wow. Because at that point, I am the youngest of 10 children.
Whoa.
Both of my parents are blue-collar workers. Till this day, actually, we still don't have any entrepreneurs as far as like in my immediate family. My siblings didn't become entrepreneurs. My parents didn't become entrepreneurs. And so I didn't have a blueprint as to this is what it means to be an entrepreneur. But that teacher, like you said, believing in me, going out of her way to say, I'm not going to even let you tell me no about this. I think you should do this. And buying my first set of business cards, that gave me the courage. But to me, that was such a small story in my life that I had never really told before. But it's those moments of courage that has really helped me, after 14 years, helped me get to where I am today and working with the type of clients that I am today. It's those small moments of courage. And so, as I'm working with clients, there's always those small things. And that's why I'm saying I'm digging for the truth, because as you're telling me something that you're just going to tell me offhandedly, but I'm like, wait, no, there's something
there it is right there.
Yeah. And it creates a thread, and you see the patterns. I worked with a client I did a road mapping session for early this month. And what he had realized after our session is that there's this pattern that has become full circle for him. So he is a copywriter. And within the last 8 years, he has gone from making $40,000 a year, not even being a copywriter. He was actually in sales, ironically. And started learning copywriting, and 8 years later has made over 7 figures as a copywriter. And what we realized within those 8 years, and even leading up to that, there were these people in his life that became mentors that took the time to tell him, you're great at doing what you do, and I'm going to show you how you can be better, right? And now he's at a point where he's teaching other marketers and other copywriters, and it's come full circle where he's had all these mentors. His wife is the reason why he got into copywriting. And she's become a mentor for him, but it helped him get to where he is now, to where he feels like he needs to be a mentor to others, right? And so he didn't realize that before. He didn't realize how these teachers and mentors in his life have helped him get to where he is until we got deeper into the story and created that thread. So, yeah, it's very important to realize what those small things are that actually create the bigger moments that create this greater story arc, if you will.
Yes.
It's fascinating.
It really is. It's so cool. I love it. And so when you do this road mapping process, basically we're talking about, it's just under $10,000 to do this, right? We talked about.
Yes.
And you did have this client that is an interior designer, and you worked with him for 3 years. Tell us a little bit about Tell us some of the successes. Like, now, I'm going to say to my inside voice, I have my inside voice and my outside voice. My inside voice is what I really think. Like, sell me on it, right? That's what I'm thinking, right? Outside voices, please share with us some of the, ROI that this interior designer enjoyed from working with you, right? Because it's not an insignificant investment. And of course, that is just the first layer. That doesn't include now all of the financial investment in actual filming and editing and producing the final product. So this is not for my baby designer just yet. The baby, this is for somebody that's got some coin in their bank. But tell us about the success and some of the nuances of how it did affect the designer's business that you worked with, Jude.
Sure, no problem. So the designer that I worked with, his name is William. And William originally came to me because William was in a point of his life, running a successful business, and wanted to take it to the next level. But he had one very big issue that he kept running into. He would go to these client meetings, right? He'd get a lead, he'd go to the client meeting and look to pitch the client. And after 2 hours, had no idea if he had the client, sold or not, right? Because he had this 8-step process that he would go through, that he would explain to the client that he does with every remodeling project. And he wanted specifically to tell them that because he wanted them to trust him, that he knows what he's doing. But it was going over their heads. After 2 hours, they just couldn't really wrap their head around it. And so we did road mapping. And in our road mapping session, of course, that's where I figured that part out. Other things that I figured out is who his ideal client is. And his ideal client, the client that he just absolutely loves working with, is a client that, so his firm is in Pompano Beach, Florida. And the client, if they have a home in this area, they're on their second or third home, right? And they don't actually live in Florida. So they would like an interior designer who understands project management, who understands construction, and they just want to hand over the keys and trust that he's going to be able to do the job. That's the most ideal client for him. But he wasn't always attracting that. So he'd take odd jobs that, that just, it would fill the account, but it wouldn't necessarily fill him. It wouldn't make him fulfilled. And so understanding that, it helped me understand, okay, these are the type of clients I need to interview for his videos. Because if you want to attract a certain type of client, you want to be able to tell success stories on that type of client, right? And so, again, we did all of this through road mapping. Then we actually produced the project. And we produced it in phases, which is why we worked together for 3 years. In the first phase, it was all about filming this 8-step process and telling the story of this 8-step process. Because for him, that was the secret sauce. The only reason that any project was successful is because he knows he had followed those 8 steps.
Right.
But we created this 9-minute video that tells the story of this 8 steps, but we never said, here is the 8-step process. Instead, we just took the viewer on a journey of understanding what it looks like to go from beginning to end. We never said, hey, here's step 1, here's step 2. We just showed everything that his firm does in between. We literally go to, if they're going to to the, I forget what it's called. I might call it the wrong name at this point, but the place where you can get your toilets and get your vanity and different things like that. If they go to that vendor,
plumbing supply or the
supplier,
kitchen cabinet supplier or stone yard, any of the different vendors that the designers need to access, right?
We show that. We show the conversations that they're having. We show why they're making certain decisions based off of what the client may need. And so anyway, we do this 9-minute video showing the 8-step process. Another thing that we do is a brand film, is just showing just who they are, their core values, what they stand for. And we create this series. It's a 4-video series. And what ends up happening is that he uses that video in an email campaign. And so now, before he ever meets with a client, he can send them these series of videos. And now they're sold before they ever meet with him in person. They're sold on either whether or not they're the right fit or they're not.
Right. They weed themselves in or out of his world.
Exactly. And so he went from spending 2 hours in these meetings to now spending 30 to 45 minutes and knowing for sure this client is saying, when and where do we make this deposit? Right. And so that was the most important piece and part of William and making sure that he can go from, I have this new lead, they're interested, but are they the right fit? I've sent them these videos. Now I know they're the right fit, and now I can weed them out and be able to do a great project. Phase 2 was about email marketing, and it was about taking this 9-minute video that we'd created and breaking it down into 16 different videos.
Wow.
This is a conversation we could have if you want to go into, but what I often believe is that clients are always looking for the next great thing or the next great idea, but they're sitting with gold in their hands. They're searching for silver, but sitting with gold. There's gold in their hands, and the gold is this content that you've already created, but you just haven't figured out how to repurpose it, how to use it on different platforms, because there's so much more than just your website and social media. I mentioned a little bit about if you're speaking on stage, you can use it there. One of the things that William wanted to do is use it in a PDF, because he goes to speak and train and connect with other vendors outside of just interior design. And so he'll leave them with a PDF, but he wanted to make sure in that PDF is the videos, some of the videos that we created. So there's all these different ways that you could repurpose video. And one of the ideas that we had was taking this 9-minute video, and for people who have no idea who he is, doesn't even come across his website, breaking it down into 30 to 60-second videos so that it's more digestible and he can use it more long-term. It was 16 email sequence that he used long-term and be able to basically indoctrinate someone into who he is, so that once they're ready or they know someone who's ready, they can then refer to William.
It's very powerful. I mean, to think about, like when you said in that one part there that somebody comes, learns about his firm, and they receive those first 4 videos and the 2-hour consult going to 35, 40 minutes. That's, I mean, if you do that 5 days a week and you save an hour and a half, the money that you can, you know what I mean? Just like, if somebody just gave me an hour and a half, 5 days a week extra in my life, I'd be like, oh my God.
Exactly. It helps you create leverage for yourself. I mean, time is one of the most important things we have, and not just as an entrepreneur. I mean, just in general, right? Like, it's the most important thing that we have. It's the most important resource that we have that we can never get back. But we can find ways to get more of it, though.
And the thing about it is it's putting the time in up front. So to create a 9-minute video, I mean, we're probably talking about 6, 7, 8 hours of video taking, right? Like video production. So it's just stopping the tracks. It's just like anything else that we do in our businesses. If we have not developed an intake process, if we have not developed an install process, it's almost impossible to do these things on the fly. A designer recently was in our Process Leads to Profits course, and she said this when we asked her, why did you decide to join this course? She said, I feel like I'm building the car as I'm driving it. You know what I mean? Right? Yeah. And so when you think about that one level of ROI of having an hour and a half saved on every consult, or most consults, I'm sure, and having that peace of mind knowing that by the time you're going to the consult, it's probably a pretty much closed deal, is awesome. But you can't create it while you're moving. You have to stop the tracks and take this time and invest in your road mapping process, and then of course in this the rest of the steps that go into it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it feels for some people, again, I mentioned it can feel unnerving to say I'm going to stop for 8 hours and take a full day to really think through this, to really take the time to figure out exactly what it is that we want to do, where we're going. But it's the most important piece. You have to slow down in order to speed up.
Yes, it's so true. And when I think about, so this gentleman, William, he ended up working with you for 3 years. I mean, that just tells us right there, if he keeps coming back for more, he's getting some results from this whole relationship and this whole way of marketing his business. But would you say that beyond having more closed projects, that he was able to earn, would you say that his biggest ROI was really having that ability to zero in and attract that ideal client that he decided for himself was the one?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Right?
It was the most important ROI for him because I think I mentioned this a little bit earlier. We want to enjoy what we do, wake up every morning and love the clients that we work with. For him, it was that he had made good money, but it was about working with the right type, doing both, making good money and working with the right type of clients. And that to him was the most important thing. Like it was it wasn't just, of course, there was a financial part. He made more money than he had made before, but it was, if I can work with the right type of client every single day and close deals better than I've closed them before, and know that I'm happy, like, and that, for him, he has children at home, he has a wife at home, to know that he's happy, like, all of that is more important to him than just the financial part of it.
Right. I love it. And what about, is there another success story that you can share with us? Of course, you've worked with some famous people. You worked with Steve Harvey and, which is so fascinating and exciting, but it's almost more interesting to me when you take a regular business owner and help them bust up their business. Is there another story that you'd like to share with us about somebody that you've worked with, Jude?
The reason why I got into this very specific type of documentary filmmaking, if you will, is because I worked with an entrepreneur back in 2009. She was selling colored lipsticks online. So if you think blue, purple, green, yellow lipstick, they weren't popular back in 2009, 2010. But she was selling it online, and she really believed in, her brand was all about confidence. It was all about women empowerment and having self-belief in the skin that you're in and not allowing anyone to tell you anything different. And so that's why she specifically wanted to make these colors, because for herself, she was looking for blue lipstick and couldn't find it at the time. And so she had created it. She created this mix and actually wore it out to a party one night, and people kept asking her, hey, where did you get that from? Like, it actually looks really good on you. Where did you get the lipstick from? And for her, that was a light bulb, like, maybe I should create it, because she didn't have an answer because she had created it herself. And so we documented, for her, she was very smart in knowing that she wanted to document the journey from beginning to end. She knew she would build something powerful. I don't think she really understood how powerful it would ultimately be, but she reached out to me and talked to me about doing a vlog video series, which I wasn't interested in at the time, but I pitched her to do a documentary series. And what it ultimately ended up happening, to make a long story short, what ultimately ended up happening is that she launched the brand within a year, 12 months of creating this brand and creating the business and using the video to launch the business.
Whoa.
She had made $1 million.
Whoa. And
part of it was because at the time she had only used Twitter, email, and YouTube, which is where she housed the video. And she pushed it every single day. Like, she made sure that different blog sites, entertainment blog sites were, sharing the video. She shared it almost every day on Twitter. She shared it with, she had friends that had their own email list and had their own followers, and she made sure to share it with them. And so for a full year, she did this and was able to gross $1 million. But it wasn't just because, I won't take full credit and say it's just because we did a video. It was what we put inside of the video. We shared the story of who she was, not just that she was creating this colored lipstick and how she was doing, but who she was at her core, so that you would understand that this was a bigger mission. This wasn't just, I can make a lot of money selling lipsticks. This was, I wanted to change the way women think about themselves. Specifically for her, it was a younger audience, a younger demographic. And so specifically for her, thinking about how a younger audience thinks about themselves and puts on yellow, blue, and purple lipstick. And so that was one success story. Again, that was another client I worked with for a long time. We ended up doing a documentary series for 3 years. And now she's from cosmetics, she's now into fitness and also selling hair. Most of my clients are looking to show who they are at their core, because building a brand is not just about logo or colors or a design. It's all about who you are. Can someone connect with you on a deeper level that makes them want to, I often tell the story of, like, are your clients concerned about you at 3:00 in the morning? Right? In the same way that your best friend would be concerned about you, like the same way your best friend would jump out of bed if you call them at 3:00 in the morning and say, I have an emergency, and they'll come, no questions asked. Are your clients connected to you on a deeper level in that same way? That is what I look to do and will look to create in the stories that I tell for my clients.
That's an interesting way to put it. Not, of course, that we would expect our client to actually get out of bed, but the idea is that your point is, do they know you well enough to even consider getting out of bed for you at 3 a.m, right? right?
Right.
It's do they
exactly.
even know enough about you, your person, your world, your business, your hopes, your ideals, your dreams to even say, yeah, all right, I'll come help.
Right, exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Interesting. And, what's the thing about, this young woman launching this business, it's not lost on me that, the tube of lipstick is anywhere from like, what, $5 to $10, to gross $1 million on such a low priced ticket item is a significant statement. And I can see how I think the lesson here with thinking about for our businesses, if we want to invest in storytelling that ultimately results in video production like this, is the lesson there is that woman was the same woman. She had the same reason, to your words, her same why for starting this lipstick company, and the same reason for putting these fun, outrageous, bold colors on it, and the same reason for wanting to connect with people and create the entire platform to begin with. But without the video, how would anybody have known it? Right? She could have she could have done podcast interviews. She could have talked to people. She could have, whatever. She could have done home demonstrations, like Tupperware type demonstrations. But when you think about how you describe that, she made the financial investment in creating the video, and that was something that she could push every day to Twitter, to YouTube, to the different bloggers and so forth. That's very different than even a stranger lifestyle blogger getting a video about this woman telling her reason for developing this product line is very different than a lifestyle blogger getting a box with 4 samples in mail and a postcard that says, I believe in empowering people to be themselves. It's the same thing, but it's so much less powerful than the video, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It goes back to the statement I made earlier about hearing something said 1,000 times is completely different than seeing it for yourself. Like seeing that journey. Right. I talked about you or us in general as human beings being able to sit through a 2-hour movie. Like we're literally going through a visual experience for 2 hours. Right. There's a story, a part of it. Like I said, that's the biggest piece. But we're also seeing things and we're seeing the small little details. And that is what makes it more convincing and makes us want to buy into that person. Right. Like buy into whatever they have to sell is because we bought into them as a person, as a human being. It's about seeing it visually for yourself.
Very interesting, very powerful. Well, we have been told by many, many experts over the last several years that video is the way to, meet your consumer and for them to meet you and for them to start to be a part of your world and your process to the end result, as you said, for them to actually know before you even arrive, are you a good fit? Do they feel aligned with you? Do they like what you stand for? In addition to liking your design and your aesthetic and all of that stuff. It's, Claire Jefford has been on the show a couple of times, and she's an interior design business coach, Jude, and she's also an interior designer. And she's also a vlogger. She has a YouTube channel with, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of downloads. She's very successful at showing who she is to both the consumer and also both to the interior design industry. And she has said more than a few times, by the time she knocks on somebody's door, they feel like the person feels like they're friends with her already. What I mean? They're like hugging her hello and, mentioning different things about what they've learned about her through her videos. And it just feels very like you've skipped that whole step of, I'm not sure if I'm going to like you or not. So let's just talk here and see. Right.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. It builds that deeper connection. Yeah, oftentimes I have clients that say to me, same thing as the person that you just mentioned, the YouTuber, how people feel like they know me before they ever know me. And that is, to me, that's powerful. That's magical to be able to see someone through a screen and feel like you absolutely know everything about them. That's what makes what I do so important to helping others tell their story and share their story, bring it to life in a very powerful way.
Yeah, it's awesome. I just love it. And so just a little bit of practical information before I let you go. So you do the discovery process, your road mapping process, I should say. And at that point, when we leave you for that day, Jude, you have storyboarded the video. It's not like, oh, and then I'm going to come back to you and make a proposal and we'll see what the story would be. We leave with it intact. And at that point, you will give us a proposal for what the investment would be for you to then do the next step of taking the video and doing the post-production. But you mentioned to me off air that someone can also take that and execute it on their own if they think they have the skill set or they have their own video team and XYZ, correct? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll do the entire session. We create what I call a preliminary storyboard. I will go back and do a more cleaned up storyboard, but I'll create a preliminary storyboard so that, again, because we are, as human beings, are visual. So I want to make sure I'm not just talking to you, and we're not just writing things down, but you're also able to see the scene itself or see what I'm thinking about creating. But yeah, I leave you with a full plan that literally anyone with a video camera can look at this plan, look at the storyboard, look at the content, because I go over core values and what other stories that you can share. I go over how to film it. I leave that with you, and literally any video person can take that and say, okay, great, I know what to create from here. And so, yeah, I leave you with that plan, and you could either decide you want to move forward with me and have me create the story for you, or you can have another video team or videographer create the content for you. But that initial investment, I also want to make you feel like you have something that, whether or not we decide to move forward together, you've invested in something that you can move forward with in general, not just with me.
I like that because, we all come to things at different stages of our business, and we might be intrigued by this and have the ability to make that initial investment, and maybe not necessarily the second investment, but we can put it on a shelf for a minute or two and come back to it in a couple of months. Or, as you said, we might have access to resources or, it's so funny because I recently had a conversation with someone and they were talking to me about how there's so much talent. Like, think about you at 17, that teacher recognizing you. There's tons of kids in colleges that have that same fire and drive. And maybe if we're not at the point where we can just write checks for all of this, right? You work with a young videographer who's willing to, do whatever. I'm just always look for ways, Jude, that whether I'm at a point in my career where I'm a 7 or an 8-figure business interior design firm, and I'm just like, hey, let's hire this out. Let's do this like soup to nuts, just, A+ all the way. But where are we in our different journey and all the different designers listening, and how can I get some of that? But maybe I have to like bootstrap it a little, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the most important part, we've talked about it at the very beginning. I want to end on the same note. The most important part is the story. Any and everybody, like, we've seen it before. We've seen someone take a video camera on their phone and record something and it goes viral, right? The most important part is not what you're filming with, it's what you're talking about in the story. It's who you are. It's what you put in the video that makes it so impactful, not just using video itself. Because we've seen plenty of people at this point, 2020, we've seen plenty of people that just sit in front of a camera and talk. But there's others that, that show the behind the scenes, that show some of the things that they're creating, and it makes it more powerful and impactful because there's a whole entire storyline around it, not just they're pointing a camera at themselves. And so, again, that's why when I create that roadmap and I leave you with the roadmap, I want to make sure you're left with something that you can do on your own, because as great as I think I am, my secret sauce is the storytelling, not just creating video. Video is the vehicle that helps you leverage and make sure that a lot more people know about you. But what helps give fuel to that vehicle is the storytelling itself, and that's what my secret sauce is.
I love it. I think it's awesome. It's so intriguing. I encourage everybody to go to Jude's website and look at the videos that he has created for some of his clients there. They're just, you really do, you're just drawn right in. Jude, tell us how they find you and so forth.
Sure. So best way to reach me is through my website. My website is judecharles.co. Again, that's Jude Charles, my first and last name, .co. And that is the best way to reach me to like LuAnn mentioned, watch some of the other clients that I've worked with and their stories that I've told. But also to get a better understanding of how we can work together if that's something you'd like to do.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I thank you so much, Jude, for coming on the show. When I saw the information about you, it came across my desk. I was like, oh, yes, I want to meet this man. This is, I will just say to you again, we have been told over and over by many experts the power of video in helping us explain our story and attract our ideal client. But it is that scary part. What is the sequence of the video? What is the storyline? What is the roadmap that really does create the video that will increase our ROI? And it's hard to find somebody that knows how to do that. And so I'm so glad we found you. Thank you so much for coming on the show, Jude.
Thank you for having me. It's been a great conversation, being able to geek out on storytelling a bit and on video as well. So thank you for having me.
This is the nuance of any effective marketing initiative, isn't it? Getting to you, your why, your Fred Burns only, your Nicole Heimers, expressing your brand in the nooks and crannies, right? Jude is talented and clearly passionate about helping business owners tap into their unique value so that they can do as he described, as our colleague William does, so that you aren't just doing the design work that you love, but you're doing it with and for the type of people and clients you love. All right. So speaking of William, his company is called Great Spaces, and that's GREIGHT Spaces. And I have already reached out to him and invited him on the show. So won't that be great to hear about this whole experience that he's been through with Jude Charles from his side of it, right? I thought so. I know. I can't wait. All right. Now, another thing that I want to say about Jude's point of view in creating the videos that help our client feel like they already know us, right? I happen to teach the 7-step sales process for professional window covering experts, and I do this through Exciting Windows. You know I'm on the National Advisory Council for Exciting Windows, and that I love my colleagues at Exciting Windows. And every year, 3 times a year, in fact, I teach this 6-hour course. And the truth is, it is as effective for interior designers, window treatment pros, bricklayers. The truth is sales, all right? But the point I want to make here is that the foundation of this 7-step sales course process is that the sale does not start at the client's door. It starts way before that. It starts on your website, the intake call, the opportunities that you have to create so that you can connect with the client to make the beginnings of a relationship with them long before you actually get to the consultation. And this is just how Jude described William was succeeding once he started creating the video for his business, right? So good business is good business. And when I talk with expert after expert who confirms the same principles of success as the ones before them, well, then I know that we're onto something, right? All right. Now, I want to say that there were previous episodes and guests mentioned. You'll always find this information in the show notes. So if you like a show, there's little tidbits of information there. I always try and point out to you other shows to bring you more of that type of information. So designers like Pulp Design Studios, Marie Flanagan Interiors, and Ariane Belazar, they have been some of the trailblazers for using video in their businesses. And I'm sure by listening to these episodes as well, you'll get some more tips and insights. All right. And then, of course, we have my co-authors in the second book, A Well-Designed Business, the Power Talk Friday experts, Nicole Heimer, Fred Burns, and Claire Jefford. You can learn more by reading their chapters and listening to their episodes. All right. For the book, you can get that at LuAnnNigara.com/book2. And I would say that if you're interested in the sales course I teach through Exciting Windows, go to excitingwindows.com. I'll be teaching it in Charlotte this March 2020 and also in Baltimore this May 2020, and I think Kansas City in September 2020. So these are 3 opportunities. You do not have to be a member of Exciting Windows to join and pay for this class. All right. So links again will be in the show notes. All right. So I hope you found this information helpful and valuable. And if you did, if you'd be so inclined and so kind to write me a review on iTunes, I'd sure appreciate it. My thanks to Jude Charles and to you for showing up. Have an excellent day, and please decide to be excellent. Thank you so much for joining me again today. This podcast is a production of WindowWorks, your resource for custom window treatments and awnings. To learn how we can help you on your next interior design project, go to www.windowworks-nj.com. And if you're interested in working with me on your business, either through masterminds or one-on-one coaching, or you want to know how to get my book, The Making of a Well-Designed Business, or you just want to know what's going on in the podcast land and where I'm going to be, all of that is found at LuAnnNigara.com. Thank you so much. Have an excellent day.